Good morning, I'm Hank Hudson. Welcome to RoxomTV News. We begin this morning with breaking news as British police have arrested Lord Peter Mandelson, a veteran Labour politician and Starmer's ambassador to the United States, as part of a criminal investigation into his ties with convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Officers took the 72-year-old into custody at his Camden home on Monday on suspicion of misconduct in public office in relation to his friendship with Jeffrey Epstein. Authorities confirmed the arrest relates to an ongoing inquiry into whether he passed sensitive government information to Epstein more than a decade ago. No allegations of sexual misconduct have been made against him in this case as of yet, and Mandelson served as the United Kingdom's ambassador to the United States from 2024 until September of 2025, when he was dismissed amid revelations about his friendship with Epstein. The arrest follows search warrants executed earlier this month at two properties connected to him and comes after the government referred communications between Mandelson and Epstein to police. The investigation centers on communications and documents suggesting Mandelson may have shared confidential information with Epstein during his time in the government, including while he held senior ministerial positions in the early 2000s. British police have stressed that investigations and interviews are ongoing, and the political fallout for both Mandelson and Starmer has already been significant. Mandelson resigned his seat in the House of Lords amid the scandal, and multiple institutions stripped him of honors amid the controversy. Starmer's government has been facing scrutiny for having appointed Mandelson as ambassador, despite earlier questions about his associations. As this story develops, law enforcement and political responses are expected to evolve further, and we'll make sure to keep you up to date with that one as we get more information. Now, our next story is occurring in Mexico, stretching from Guadalajara to the Pacific coast city of Puerto Vallarta, as the country is dealing with the kind of violent backlash that only happens when you remove a kingpin who spent more than a decade building one of the most powerful drug organizations on the planet. On Sunday, the Mexican government killed Nemesio Ruben Oseguera Cervantes, known globally as El Mencho. And within hours, the cartel he led responded in a way that made it very clear the organization did not disappear with him. Cargo trucks were set on fire and dragged across highways to block major arteries of travel. Gunmen attacked security forces in multiple regions, and plumes of black smoke rose over cities as drivers abandoned vehicles and ran, unsure whether they were caught in traffic or in the middle of something much worse. Roughly 400 flights were canceled, stranding thousands of tourists. Many of them have been stuck in Puerto Vallarta, sheltering in place.
We've been coming down here for almost 20 years, and we've always told people to come down and check it out because you always feel safe here. We've never, ever not felt safe. And today was the first day as we left the hotel to go have breakfast and saw all the craziness going on and the violence and the smoke that we were actually terrified. And we saw the people running down the streets, running from the flames and stuff and the fire. And we ran back to the hotel, and then that's when they got the shelter in order place, and we've been here all day. And we're staying at Hotel Eloise, and there's no restaurant or bar or anything here. So we've all been here without anything all day, and the staff has been great, running and grabbing stuff and bringing us some snacks and some water and stuff. But it's been pretty scary, as you can see from the videos and pictures I shared, that blocks away is where all of it's happening, and all the Oxos, they burnt down all of the little Oxos. So there's been little fires and stuff all over the city around us where it's normally fun and nice and people walking around and all the little local restaurants and all the locals being locked up and hidden with us too. And there's a few homeless people that were brought into this hotel they allowed in so that they had some place to go too. So it's been quite surreal knowing this warm, wonderful place that we come to visit a couple times a year is in lockdown and just terrifying for all the people.
At the Guadalajara airport, travelers were seen running to safety as they were told to shelter in place, and many cities have turned into ghost towns following the unrest. Take a look.
But Guadalajara's airport, just one place where normality was not prevailing. Passengers scrambling to upper levels, worried about fires spreading below. The city's streets all but empty as people heeded instructions to shelter in place, as they did into the night in León, the capital of Guanajuato state. After a day of frightening disorder and violence, Mexicans left wondering what comes next.
Across several states, schools have closed, public transportation has stopped, and several gas stations have been shut down. Residents have formed WhatsApp networks to share safe routes and warnings in real time. Take a peek.
Look, now we're scared. We only go out when it's necessary. It's good that they're finishing with all these organizations. But there's fear because of what's happening. You don't know how to react or what to do.
Now, for viewers watching from outside Mexico, this matters for more than just dramatic footage. Mexico is a key U.S. trade partner, a major tourism destination, and deeply intertwined with border security and drug policy conversations. So when instability spreads at this level, it affects supply chains, travel, diplomacy, and political pressure almost immediately. All right, joining me to talk about this story and others this morning, the man with the biggest beats in all of the land, a good friend of the program, Stephen Orr. Stephen, happy Monday. Thanks for joining us this morning. How are you?
Thanks, Hank. Pretty good. Look, I'm about to go to Mexico here in a few weeks, so I'm not scared.
No bueno, no bueno, Stephen. I'm scared for you. I was just about to ask if you were going to postpone any pre-planned Mexico trips. My dad actually just got back from Puerto Vallarta yesterday, so I'm certainly counting my blessings. So as someone who is, in fact, going to Mexico in the not-too-distant future, Stephen, what do you make of what we're seeing out of Mexico right now after the death of El Mencho?
I mean, this is the sex cartel lead head that's gone now. Look, whenever you do these kind of raids, expect some backfall and some backlash. And, when you look at how many times in our country, we had this war on drugs, it never freaking works. I don't know what they're thinking. You want to stop the war on drugs, have people stop doing drugs. I don't understand. And people aren't going to do that. So, this is not smart. I think the way they went about this was not the right way. Look, when you look at the Sinaloa cartel, you look at the other cartels, one cartel goes down, the other one comes back up. So the war on drugs, I mean, you can think of it like Reagan, just say no, it didn't work either, right? You can't legislate morality. It's just not going to happen. And you want to stop people from dying on drugs. Fentanyl was a problem, and I understand that. And the president has said that fentanyl is an issue, and they're going after the cartel there. But there'll be 4 more cartels right behind it. They're not playing around. It is a moneymaker for Mexico. It's a moneymaker for several countries, including Colombia. And they're not going to stop. You'll stop when it's not profitable. It's not hard. You want to make Nike shoes, and people stop Nike shoes, and they'll make new Nike shoes, different ones to protect their interests here. And so they did. And then they blew up things and burnt things down, and they protested. It goes to show you just how entrenched that they are in these communities. This doesn't just happen overnight. So when you look at it, you're blowing up submarines and ships that are coming across the water. And it's millions of pounds of cocaine. It's fentanyl. It's all kinds of things coming across. No, you're not going to stop. You're not going to legislate morality. It's not going to happen. The war on drugs has never worked. It won't work now. It hasn't worked in the past, and it won't work in the future. It just doesn't work. And when you look at the next level of this, it's the next leader coming up, right? They already said the Mencho, okay, fine. There's 4 more people ready to go to behind that. What do you do in those cases? This is multiple states within Mexico. This isn't like one little area. It's not like, as you said, Puerto Vallarta or Manzanillo or Mazatlan or in Cozumel. I can name them all the places that are tourist destinations. Even the guy you just had on there, video. Oh, I've never seen this before. Yeah, you have. It's called Minnesota. Yeah, you have. It's different states around our own country, right? Things happen, right? When you implement militaristic, let's just say in this case, the way to handle things, it doesn't always work out, especially when it's against your own people. It's not gonna work. And just be honest. Let's get deep down into it. I mean, they were suppliers of jobs. The number of people that have lost jobs over the last few weeks is quite a few, and especially, there's going to be a scramble over there. So, and they're not happy about it. So, you're going to say, oh, well, how do we stop drug trafficking? You never have. Been going on for only 4,000 years. So how is this any different? You want to stop it? Have people stop being addicted. That's a good. I got an idea. How about let's spend some money on helping people themselves with their addictions. That's better, right? Mental issues are a bigger issue than the amount of cocaine that crosses a border. That's just silliness to me.
Yeah, I mean, if we haven't learned anything from Breaking Bad, it should be that when, one leader falls, there's always going to be someone else waiting to take his place. So we shouldn't act that surprised by it. And you're right, like this is kind of a supply and demand issue, unless we all agree. And I'm going to propose for you and me right now, Big Pete. You and I are going to start the first official boycott of fentanyl. You and me are fentanyl free, and we're encouraging everyone to join us in that, because that's the only way we're stopping.
I'm with you on that one. I don't really understand. I don't get that in the first place. I know. I don't understand it at all, to be honest with you, but I can tell you that I guess fentanyl makes it a little more addictive, and fentanyl makes it more potent, and they're doing that, and guess what, people are doing it. I mean, I grew up in Southern Illinois. It's pretty much the meth capital of the United States. West Virginia, same situation, right? It didn't happen during the moonshiners era, right? No. It didn't happen during opium wars in California, in San Francisco during the gold rush. It didn't. I mean, when you look at poppy fields in during Vietnam War, same situation. It doesn't stop it. You want to stop it? Stop people from using it.
Right. And this is one of those situations right now that I kind of feel like we're coming away with more questions than answers, right? Because we saw this big kingpin, he's been eliminated, and the entire country erupts within hours of it happening. So it kind of begs a question here, Stephen, like, is what we're seeing, is that signaling strength from like the Scheinbaum administration? They're really cracking down on these drug problems, or does it maybe reveal how embedded and, kind of to your point earlier, resilient these drug cartel organizations really are? So do you think this is a signal that's good for the Mexican government? They're finally cracking things down, or are we maybe even in more trouble than we realized with these cartels, given how resilient they seem to be?
They're very resilient, and we're in more trouble than we think we are. I believe that the president of our country said that we would build the wall and it'd be paid by Mexico. The wall hasn't been built and hasn't been paid by Mexico. It got paid by us. Things just don't go the way that we think they're going to go, right? And the fallout is a little higher than they expected. I'm sure, Claudia Scheinbaum just said, president of Mexico, said everything is fine down here. There's no chaos down here. There's chaos, all of this is erupting from one thing, the trade war. Let's be honest. This is a trade war issue. That's what's happening here. And the president does not want fentanyl into the country. Okay, I agree with that. But do you send in military to tackle your own people? Oh, well, they're bad people. Okay, great. That's I'm not going to defend criminal activity. I'm not going to defend drugs. I'm not going to defend the people doing it, right? That's up to them, and that's what they want to do. That's fine. But when you look at it from the perspective of how are we attacking this problem, we don't need a sledgehammer to attack a problem like this, right? This is not going to happen. You're going to see more people coming up and saying, okay, well, when El Chapo went down, his son popped up, right? When El Chapo's son went down, another one popped up. This is not going to stop it. Right. No. This is not going to stop drugs. It's not. I mean, my goodness. We've gone for. Remember when the war on drugs was about weed?
Yeah.
Now we've legalized it. So
how far we've come.
What is wrong with this country when and other countries when they're trying to figure this out? Great, but work in tandem. Work with the United States. Work with Mexico. Work with Colombia. Look. In Colombia says, look, this is for us, it's a major money maker. So make money some other way. That'll solve it. You want to solve a drug problem? Don't have people using it. The addictiveness of that drug is what's making it. So no, I think this is silliness. Common sense has been missing for a while in both of our countries, and I think it needs to come back.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And common sense aside, though, this will kind of permeate to other parts of the world too. Obviously, this is not just isolated in Mexico. And what I always love about having you on the show, Stephen, is kind of getting the market perspective of things. Because what we're seeing right now is we're seeing all of this violence, and it's causing disruption of commercial flights. I think they said already 400 have been canceled. Yeah. It's obviously hitting tourism and trade in a country that the United States is very much economically tied to. So my question for you would be, how do you feel like investors are typically pricing in the type of instability we're seeing in Mexico at all right now? Is that kind of moving the needle for them at all, or is this just a temporary thing and they're not even looking at it?
They don't care. Look, let's be honest. They don't care. Look, you had the guy earlier just saying, we've never seen this before, but we're still here. He's not left, right? I mean,
it's true.
The cruises aren't stopping. I got emails and texts from my friends down there in Cozumel. I'll be in Cozumel soon, and that area, and Punta Cana, and I'm not seeing that, right? And they're all saying, hey, everything's fine here, folks. It's on another area. Don't worry about us. Everything's great. You want to talk about the problem with the airlines right now? The biggest snowstorm in 30 years just hit the Northeast. That's a major problem, right? Yes, there are some. Yes, the airports in Mexico City are shut down. Yes, the airports are shut down on the coast, in Puerto Vallarta, Cancun area, where I'll be. I get that, right? But they'll come back and everything's fine, and they'll probably even have more people coming in, right? They don't really care. This is a blip on the screen. This is nothing. I don't think if I were, in fact, I probably will be buying airlines, ETS, ETF is probably the ETF to buy today. I'm not telling you what to buy or sell, but I mean, if you want, this is nonsense. Look, there's more important things going on in the world right now than killing cartel leaders. That'll be another one tomorrow. So this is silly.
Yeah. No, I hear you. I hear you. But this story is, it involves a couple different components. Obviously, we're seeing the terror that's being struck into a lot of Mexican and citizens and tourists in Mexico. But I also want to talk about how the government's operation of this whole thing actually took down El Mencho, because this is a story in and of itself. So I'm going to bring you back in just a second, Stephen, to talk about it, because what we saw here was actually the result of weeks of coordinated intelligence tracking between Mexican military forces and U.S. agencies, culminating in a targeted operation aimed at a location believed to be housing the cartel leader El Mencho. And the moment forces moved in, it turned into a full-scale firefight. You see, gunmen engaged Mexican army units in a sustained exchange that left 25 National Guard members dead, marking one of the deadliest coordinated counterstrikes by the cartel in recent years, and underscoring how heavily aimed and prepared this organization remains when confronted directly by authorities. El Mencho was wounded during the exchange and later died while being transported under military custody for treatment, bringing an end to a decade-long manhunt that had included a $15 million bounty offered by the United States. At the scene, authorities seized armored vehicles, high-caliber weapons, and explosives, describing what followed as a multi-state security emergency that required immediate deployment of military convoys to stabilize surrounding regions, while federal forces worked to dismantle improvised barricades and reopen major highways. Now, under his leadership, the cartel had grown into a dominant force in synthetic drug production, particularly fentanyl and methamphetamine, and had developed a reputation for paramilitary-style tactics that included armored convoys, drone-based attacks, and aggressive territorial expansion, which made this far more than a traditional criminal network. El Mencho's death also closes a chapter in a decade-long manhunt, but it opens a far more uncertain phase in which the real question is whether the organization consolidates quietly under a new leadership or fractures into internal competition, which historically tends to produce even more volatility before things stabilize. The headline is the elimination of the boss, but the real story is how power reorganizes when the boss is no longer there to control it. I'm bringing Stephen back. Stephen, when a military operation like this successfully removes a cartel boss, but it results in heavy casualties on the government side, how do you feel like people should be interpreting that? Is this a strategic win, or is it just more evidence to how dangerous these groups have really become? Where do you land on it?
It's interesting. I had to look it up myself because I thought I knew the number. I wasn't sure, and I did it again. It's the Jalisco New Generation Cartel. That's the name of his cartel that he oversaw. Do you know how many cartels there are in Mexico alone? There are 9.
Jeez.
There are 9. Okay. Why this one? And that's not even splinter groups or historical groups in the past. There are 9 cartels. Right? Why this one? Why this moment? Because maybe it was getting out of control. Maybe this was the one where Mexico couldn't control it anymore. It was getting too big for its britches, as my dad would always say. Okay, great, I understand. But did you need to slam them down with a hammer and no? I think the answer was no. I think they need to work with this and get it done. Yes. Okay. So how else do you do it? Do you send the military in? Well, they did that. You see what happens. Mexico's starting to burn, even though Mexico's president says it's not. So you have to ask the question, what did it accomplish?
Right.
Did we stop fentanyl coming into the country? Nope, because there are 8 other cartels coming in. Did we stop the chaos? Did we stop violence? No, it increased. We have to understand what the fallout's going to be. We have to understand the blowback that's going to happen from this. Is this going to stop things in the future? Maybe. But there are 8 other cartels, and this cartel, after he passed away, said we're not going to stop. We're going to keep going, and we're going to grow. We're going to get more people. So I mean, no, this is not the right way of doing things. You know, I find that if you want to stop the flow of anything, I don't care what it is, whether it's apples or cocaine. If people stop using it, they'll stop making it. So you know, right? The war on drugs has always been a very interesting thing to me. It's never worked. I mean, if most people don't remember this, 2 eggs, broken eggs, and some bacon in a frying pan was this is your brain on drugs, right? That died very quickly. I mean, most people don't remember Nancy Reagan saying, you know, having all kinds of celebrities coming out, and 3 of the 8 celebrities that she had were all on cocaine. So you know, this isn't going to happen, right? When you make drugs, not even just cocaine, but other drugs, popular in movies, popular in gaming, popular in the mainstream, people are going to do it, right? People are going to be a part of it. So no, I don't think that's the key. You want to stop it? Have movies stop making it. Have Netflix stop making shows about Breaking Bad and AMC. Okay, great. Well, guess what? I think people don't really understand the violent side of and we're seeing it firsthand. It's not just the violence on the one side of, okay, don't do what I do, don't transport it. The mules, I should say, the mules. You know, when I just saw a show in Australia. It's happening in Australia, right? I mean, there's a whole I think it's on History Channel about the drug trade and coming through the borders and through the airports, right? And I watched that, and I'm like, these people are acting so stupid, like they don't know it's that they're transporting, you know, huge luggages of cocaine, kilos. Yeah. And when they're doing that, oh, it's not mine. Now it's not mine. This has been going on since the beginning of time. Drugs have always been a part of just the human nature, right? So when I look at it from that perspective, it isn't going to stop.
Yeah, no, I agree. And again, I want to encourage everyone to join my boycott on fentanyl. That's the only way we're going to get rid of this. Never had it myself, but I'm boycotting it. And then I want to look, kind of zoom out a little bit on this one, Stephen. You know, we're seeing in this operation an increased military coordination between the United States and Mexico. So my question for you is, do you feel like that's something that we're going to be seeing more of going forward, or could the possibility of the United States and Mexico cooperating further maybe create some kind of additional political friction if we see a continued escalation in this instability? Or do you think they're going to need to cooperate in order for anything to really ever get done here? Because like you said, there's 9 of them. I don't know how you fix that.
Well, I think it's a bigger question here. We have a trade war with Canada and Mexico, the USMCA, which is the big trade. NAFTA was the original with that. And it's coming up here in the summertime to be reconfigured and redebated and hopefully pass a trade bill. I think that all 3 countries can handle it. Look, when I tell people and ask them, hey, do you know where North America is? Yeah. There's 3 countries. No, there are 19, right? And this is a cooperation, right? You've not seen any cooperation. No other countries cooperating with this. It's just the United States versus whoever. United States versus Venezuela. United States versus Cuba. U.S. Well, the president's saying, well, it's because nobody else wants to do it. Yeah, they actually do. They just have a more cooperative spirit about it. So how do we get past this? How do we create a more trade-friendly cooperation between our countries? And I think that the president is saying, well, I want less fentanyl. He's saying this. He wants less fentanyl. So I think you and I not partaking in fentanyl is a pretty good thing. I think you should be happy for that. But when you look at the other things that are coming across the border, it's not just drugs that are coming across the border. Avocados. It's one of the biggest exports of Mexico. It was one of the biggest commercials in the Super Bowl. Right? Let's put more farmers making avocados because we eat them. I like margaritas. Let's make and when you look at the cartel itself. It's the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, right? The CNG.
Yeah.
Jalisco is where tequila is made, right? So why not spend more time? And guess what? Hard liquor is down because of Zepbound and things of that nature. So you know what? Let's move the needle a bit. That's what's going to change things. Having a more friendly trade organizations coming in, having those conversations, making sure that we have freer trade coming across the borders, less dependency for those countries on their drug trade, and I think you'll have a much happier both sides of the border. Look, every time I go across the border, I've never seen crime. I don't know what these people are talking about. Right? I mean, I'm the one in the pool with the margarita, right? And I want to see that. I don't want to see the cruise ships going down there. That's the more of the trade that people want to see. And when I hear this, okay, we're going to take on drugs. Well, it's going to happen somewhere else. The biggest drug trade in the United States happened in West Virginia for many decades. Then it moved to other places.
Right.
It's not just a concentric of Mexico or Colombia. It is literally everywhere in every country. One of the largest countries in the world that are partaking in drugs is Russia. Right? Why? Because they're having a money issue. They need to make money. So guess what? They're going to do that. And in Vietnam, it was the poppy fields. Afghanistan needed money. Guess what they made? Drugs. So this is not anything new. This is nothing short of just another farce. And I don't. It's not going to stop the drug trade.
Yeah, and you made a nice parallel on how it kind of relates to the global trade network that we're seeing right now, specifically with the United States, and that leads us really nicely into our next story here, Stephen. I want to talk about some news we covered last Friday that very much kind of falls in line with what we just talked about here, as the Supreme Court handed down a ruling that directly challenged the White House's trade strategy, reigniting the fight over tariffs and executive authority. The court ruled that President Donald Trump overstepped his emergency powers when he previously imposed sweeping tariffs, striking down that framework and raising immediate questions about whether the administration's aggressive trade posture had hit a legal wall. Rather than pull back, the White House moved quickly, invoking a separate provision of the 1974 Trade Act to impose a new universal 15% tariff on imports, making clear that while one legal mechanism was rejected, the broader trade strategy remains intact. Markets reacted with caution. U.S. futures slipped, European equities wavered, and gold climbed as investors recalibrated for renewed trade friction and the risk of retaliatory measures slowing global growth. Now, bond markets reflected similar concerns, pricing in the possibility that tariffs at this scale could tighten financial conditions and weigh on economic momentum. China criticized the move, European officials sought clarification, and multinational companies returned to modeling supply chain costs and pricing pressures. Supporters argue that tariffs strengthen domestic industry and improve negotiating leverage, while critics contend that broad levies function as taxes on consumers and risk escalating global tensions. For those of you watching at home, this matters because trade policy feeds directly into inflation, corporate earnings, retirement accounts, and job markets. And when legal uncertainty in Washington reshapes global pricing models, volatility is not abstract. It shows up in real numbers. The trade is once again a live variable in financial markets, and investors are adjusting accordingly. We're bringing Stephen back. Stephen, let's start at the 30,000-foot level here. The Supreme Court strikes down the prior tariff framework, and within hours, the White House pivots and reestablishes a 15% universal import levy under a different legal authority. When you look at that sequence, does the market focus more on the legal drama or on the reality that trade policy remains aggressive regardless of which statute is used? Where do you land on this most recent 15% tariff?
I think all of it is nonsense, Hank, because tariffs have never worked in the history of our country nor any other country. It just doesn't work. But what the basis of the argument for the president was, he based it on the IEEA, right, and the EPA, and which is the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. He used a very old ruling in order to get his tariffs, and when he didn't get it done by the Supreme Court, then he changed it. I don't know, Hank. I went to school for a very long time, twice, two schools, got a extra education, master's, and I can tell you that I still learned about Article 1 of the Constitution, which is the authority to generate revenue comes from Congress, not the White House. They collect taxes and duties, and they have the power to lay and collect those duties. So the president just got caught with his hand in the cookie jar, and all of a sudden he doesn't like it. I'm not a big fan of this. I don't like tariffs in the first place. He is the president. He was duly elected. He won. So he has the right to impose his will that he thought he got elected on. But you got to do it within the frameworks of our laws. And you can't make up laws or make just because you think that the law goes your way. And the Supreme Court struck him down. Not just struck him down, but 6-3. And the three that that supported him are three that he appointed. So So you know what, I don't. And actually, two of them he appointed didn't vote for him either. Too. So there's a big question around that. You're talking about Thomas, Justice Thomas, right? Alito and Kavanaugh. He's the ones appointed. So for me, no, I don't think so. The president does not necessarily have the right to levy taxes and to raise tariffs. He does have the right through a very nondescript ruling, and I still don't really understand that ruling of 1974. Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act of 1974. That trade act was through a president called Nixon, so I'm not sure that there's a lot. Okay, so I'm not putting the blame on his feet completely, because he was probably told by some of his people that, hey, we can do this. Not really. So let's just see I'm sure that he'll get taken in court on this ruling too, on the 232 rule. So no, I don't think so. I think this could possibly be another situation. And he will not be able to get this one back.
Yeah, and it brings up an interesting question that we're kind of seeing right now. Trump has been, how do I put it? He seemingly has punished people that kind of dissent from his way of thinking. We saw during his first term him firing like half of his cabinet that he elected, and now we're seeing several Supreme Court justices that he appointed now vote against his policy. Do you think we're starting to see people on maybe his side of the aisle turn a little bit after what we've seen in the recent years? Because it used to be everybody fell in line, but as of late, I feel like we're starting to see more dissension from the ranks. Are you getting that impression at all right now, Stephen?
100%. I mean, I just had long chats over the weekend with two members of Congress on the Republican side and one on the Democrat side. I'll tell you right now, I'm predicting if the election were held today, the Republicans would definitely lose the House by probably the biggest numbers in history. And right now, the Republicans in the Senate are very, very concerned that they're going to lose the Senate too. As if the election were held today, they would lose both. But that's not unusual. But what's unusual is the number of people this could be a landslide of epic proportions. And right now, the president's numbers are the same as Nixon. And you can have arguments saying, oh, well, I don't believe in polls. That's not. You better start believing in polls. They're pretty close. The last one was pretty dead on. And I will also say this much: the Democrat Party, what they call the DCCC, Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, is now spending money in Republican districts who won first terms, who Trump won handily those districts. 12 of them. That's a big number. 12 districts that are public, because Democrats don't want to spend money, but they don't have to, and they think they can pick up seats in very heavy Republican districts that Trump carried in the last two times, not just and also during Biden's terms too. So that's an expansion, and we talked about this over the weekend. I had several people that talked to me about Texas and a few states, and I said, do not be surprised if Texas turns blue. Oh no, Texas is Republican. It could very well turn blue, and I'll tell you, many members of Texas Republican side are very concerned about it. If you don't think so, ask the former, she's now passed away, but the former governor, Democrat governor of Texas, Ann Richards. And look at Kentucky, Andy Beshear, who is governor, a Democrat of a Republican state, who possibly is, and I hope is running for president of the United States. And it has some implication into the state of Indiana, or Indiana might also turn blue. I've seen very big numbers turning the numbers there too, because of the expansion of Chicago. Many people leaving Chicago, moving into Indiana. That is a big turn. And because of that, the expansion of the president's powers and his belief of what he can get accomplished has diminished greatly. And I want to say it right now, he's probably the biggest lame duck president that we've ever seen, with owning all three branches of the government. So including the Supreme Court, including Congress and the White House, same branch, right? He is no longer in power right now, folks.
Yeah. And you mentioned, we might see Texas or even Indiana turn blue. You said there's some Chicagoans moving to Indiana that could kind of flip the state. In Texas, I kind of wonder if it's a similar thing with Austin. I remember during COVID, we saw tons of people from California specifically. I think Rogan led a whole charge of them out there to Austin. So Austin's running a lot more blue than it used to be. So I'll be interested to see, especially Texas has a problem with it.
Well,
That's
you
a
have
big deal.
you have Austin and El Paso for sure, right? And Dallas.
Yeah.
But here's the biggest problem for them. The very people that actually voted him in are the Hispanics on the border who are not happy right now, who are probably losing their jobs to drugs, who are probably losing their jobs because they're getting deported on immigration issues.
Yeah.
They're not voting for him anymore. It's also happening in Miami.
Yeah. We lost him.
Republican right now, you're not a happy camper right now going into November.
Yeah, no, it's going to be very interesting. I'll be curious if they can turn this ship around. They got about 6-7 months to do so, but it's certainly going to be an uphill climb before then. So we'll see how it plays out. All right, Stephen, we're going to move on to our next story here. That's also happening in the White House as they are currently leaning on America's banks to loosen their grip on stablecoins as lawmakers scramble to push forward the long-stalled Digital Asset Market Clarity Act. Now, the legislation would establish rules for exchanges and digital asset firms and define how stablecoins operate inside the U.S. financial system, which sounds simple until money and power get involved. The sticking point right now is whether crypto platforms should be allowed to offer rewards on dollar-backed stablecoins. Banks argue that if customers can earn yield on stablecoins, deposits could migrate out of traditional bank accounts and into crypto platforms, which would shrink their balance sheets and potentially reduce lending capacity. The White House is proposing a compromise that would allow activity-based rewards, meaning incentives tied to usage but not passive interest on idle balances, which is the piece banks view as direct competition. Now, the administration has set a March 1 deadline to resolve the issue, turning up the heat on negotiators who understand that without movement here, the broader market structure bill could stall again. And for those of you at home, this matters because stablecoins sit at the intersection of dollars, payments, and digital finance. And whether Washington integrates them into the system or walls them off will shape how money moves in the U.S. for years to come. All right, Stephen, bringing you back here. This fight over stablecoin rewards sounds a little technical, but it's actually pretty fundamental. When banks argue that yield on stablecoins could pull deposits out of the traditional system, is that concern overstated, or is that a legitimate structural risk to bank balance sheets, or are they just crying because their monopoly on money is starting to, get pushed a little bit here? Well, what is your initial read on this one?
Yes, yes, and yes. I mean, they are getting pushed. Banks are losing some to crypto. We are seeing crypto getting some money pushed out. But that's a silly argument. It's like saying, oh, don't buy stocks because they'll pull money out of the bank. Don't buy a horse because it's pulling money out of the bank. Don't buy a new house or a car. Oh, well, we want you to buy a house or a car because that means money goes into the bank and then we can lend that money out and make money off your money. Oh, we can make money off your money anyway if you have money in the bank. All those things I understand. But Standard Chartered said something very interesting. They expect by 2028, in 2 years or 2.5 years, that $500 billion would leave if we did stable coins and paid them rewards. So there is a little bit of an issue there. I understand that. And of course, yield-bearing cryptos. But banks better get on board because the crypto's world's happening anyway. I know people are going to say, oh, well, crypto winter, and what does crypto do? And all the negatives that we've seen the last 6 months. I bought Chainlink yesterday. Why? Because it dipped, and the New York Stock Exchange is using Chainlink. I bought Solana. Why? Same situation. The Bitcoin Rails, the Lightning Network, is the most used ever in history of Bitcoin. So that's an old narrative that hasn't really worked too much. It does work for people who are not knowledgeable of Bitcoin and crypto, and thanks to companies like yours and media companies like RoxomTV that get it out there and tell people what's really going on. Banks better get on board. Look, there's nothing wrong with these banks. I'm a for of the banks. I'm okay with it. But they better understand that digital crypto and digital assets are coming, and they're already here to stay. They're not going away. They're not going to zero. They're going to stay here. The amount, and you're even seeing people that are talking about it. If they weren't scared, then why are they saying it? They're saying, "Oh, don't do this." If they were not scared, they wouldn't say anything. Like, yeah, whatever. They are scared. So you know what? Adopt the path. The Clarity Act, the Genius Act, all these acts that have been passed are now laws. So get with it or get out.
Yeah, and Stephen, I'd be curious to what your thoughts are for stablecoins in relation to Bitcoin. And the reason I asked this, I remember a couple of months ago, Kathy Woods from ARK Investments came out and shaved her, it was either a 2030 or 2035 price prediction on Bitcoin. And she shaved it from, I think, 1.5 to 1.2 million. And the reason she said was she felt like stablecoins could end up eating essentially a lot of Bitcoin or a portion of Bitcoin's lunch for it in the future. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that could be a real possibility in the next 5 to 10 years?
Love Kathy Woods. She's a very smart lady. Look, and let's be honest. She's right. She's lowered it, but the price of Bitcoin is at 65,000. Do I care if it's 75,000 or 60,000? If it's going to 1.5 million, I don't think she cares either. She's saying buy, right? Yeah. It's like saying the cheeseburger $3 or $4. Do you care? No, you still got to eat. You still got to eat. You're still going to eat that cheeseburger, and you're going to pay that up. That's inflation. We understand, folks. Look, I've heard every single silly narrative since 2013, 2014, and 15 when we really got, and it's the same silly narratives, right? That Bitcoin's gonna go away, and the quantum computing, and I mean I've heard it all. What's the use case for Bitcoin? Oh, I thought Bitcoin was gold. If the world was really falling apart, the price of gold would not be $5,000 an ounce; it'd be $100,000 an ounce, right? If that was the case, we are using the rails, and stable coins are coming, so we need to understand that. And even within our own selves, that we're not all orange pilled. We know that there's more crypto than just Bitcoin, so we need to understand that. And we even seen that from Vitalik talking about Ethereum. Look, I love this that. When the bigger firms start selling Bitcoin, when the Satoshi wallets start selling Bitcoin, it means that other people can now finally afford it, can buy it, right? This is good. I don't want it all in one hand. Yeah. I don't know, as much as we love Michael Saylor, I don't want him to be the Michael Saylor bank. I don't want MicroStrategy to be the bank of the future. I want everybody to have a piece of the future. Yeah. So when you hear the narratives happening, Hank, we don't want that. We want to have everybody having Bitcoin.
Yeah. No, I agree. And honestly, I think this price retracement we've seen might ultimately and kind of ironically be the thing that gets the retail crowd back into it, because we've gotten so big, we've talked about it ad nauseum before of like unit bias and stuff. But I think once we see that, it's going to happen eventually. We're going to see a day with a $5,000, maybe even a $10,000 candle. All of a sudden, the TikTok
$20,000 candle. I think we go bigger.
It might even be bigger. And once that happens, I think Bitcoin's going to be at the tip of everyone's tongues like it was just a couple of years ago.
And then the narratives will change. The narrative's like, we should have always bought it. Why did you buy the dip? And the narrative will change again. The narratives, stop I think people should stop the nonsense, stop the narratives, and understand what Bitcoin does. And also, it's also a situation where you don't put all your eggs in one basket, right? I don't buy just Bitcoin. I have stocks. I have bonds. I've got other countries' fiat currency, believe it or not. I have yen. I've got Swiss francs. Look, it's part of your portfolio. When people like Ray Dalio tell you to have it, Anthony Scaramucci, the Mooch, tells you to have Bitcoin. These guys are they know the game. They know what's happening. When JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs are owning it too,
right?
Didn't you?
Yeah. The writing is on the wall to anyone who's willing to pay attention right now, and you and I know that as well as anyone Big Beat. We are going to take a quick break, though, because when we come back, Stephen, you and I are going to be chatting about what is going on with Ethereum now. Vitalik is up to some nonsense, but hey, he's not playing with Mudang this time, so we're going to talk about that and more when we come back from this break here at RoxomTV News. So stay tuned, everybody. We'll be right back.
Some call me Chicken Little, others Bubble Boy. I'm a bit changed, but sounds familiar, right? Let me tell you a hard truth. The S&P isn't rising, the dollar's falling. That's the trick, monopoly money. It's ice melting by the second. Your savings, your salary, your time. Worth less every second. Everyone's using the wrong measuring stick. Switch the denominator. Price the S&P into Bitcoin. Hard, fixed, unprintable. Suddenly your unstoppable index, it's collapsing. And while you cling to dollars, well, Wall Street already switched. Before, you needed 2 brokers.
Still getting my ninja bonus though, right?
Fuck. Plenty of spreadsheets. And my quant!
I hate this part.
I was right. It I'll be right again. If I were you, I'd thank me.
You know my name's Dave, right?
Security matters. Zappo Bank. The only way to bank your Bitcoin. Apply now at zappobank.com.
Welcome back to Roxom TV News. Our next story lets me talk about something that the blockchain is very good at, and that is receipts. You see, on-chain data from Arkham Intelligence recently showed wallets attributed to Ethereum co-founder Vitalik Buterin moving and selling roughly 1,800 ETH, about $3.6 million worth, over a 2-day window. During that same stretch, Ethereum traded close to $2,000, down to roughly $1,800 at a modest 5 to 6% decline. Now, ETH trades billions in daily volume, but when the network's co-founder is a known seller and the wallet is publicly tracked, the market reacts to the signal. That is structural, and this is the key difference here. Ethereum operates with identifiable leadership and an institutional backbone, including the Ethereum Foundation, a Swiss-based nonprofit that funds ecosystem development, research, and grants. That structure enables coordination. It also means there are treasuries, insiders, and known entities capable of discretionary selling. Humans exist inside the monetary system. Now contrast that with Bitcoin. Its creator, Satoshi Nakamoto, is estimated to have mined roughly 1 million BTC in Bitcoin's first year. Those coins have never moved, not in 2013, 2017, not in 2021, not in any crash or rally since. There's no foundation treasury, no executive leadership, and no visible founder wallet that traders front run. Bitcoin removed the human cell pressure at the origin layer, and that's why this story matters. You see, when markets get volatile, founder-led crypto projects inevitably reflect human incentives, diversification, funding operations, and treasury management. Bitcoin structurally eliminated that variable. There is no CEO to panic. There's no foundation to rebalance, no roadmap committee adjusting monetary policies. One system depends on the identifiable people, the other minimize them from day one. That's not just philosophical. In stressed markets, it's the monetary architecture. We're bringing Stephen back. Stephen, we saw Vitalik Buterin sell a bunch of ETH. And whenever a founder wallet moves like that, the internet tends to light up. But in practical market terms, how much weight should investors actually assign to a founder selling versus broader macro and liquidity conditions? How do you view that situation?
Zero, because Vitalik Buterin is exactly who we should see and respect into a founder. When you look at founders, the number one biggest aphrodisiac for any rich person is one thing, and that's philanthropy. And we should be praising him for the philanthropy because he has been giving money to India COVID funds. He's been giving money to the University of Maryland for the public health. He gave money for airborne diseases, Ukrainian charities, animal welfare funds, yay for him, a SINS research fund. I can read them all out. ARC Institute, Canro. He has been the model of what a founder should be. And when he sells some, he says it himself. He's not looking to make himself wealthier through his quote amounts of Ethereum, and he sold some Shiba too as well, $1 billion over the Shiba. That is the absolute epitome of rich people. They want to be able to be that person that gives it all away. It ain't going to buy him into heaven, but it's certainly going to buy him some goodwill here on earth. So let's be real honest, people. I love the fact that Vitalik is doing this, and we should not, as investors, think anything into it more than he is being a good person, doing something very good with that kind of money and spreading the wealth out. I love this. I absolutely love it. Is it giving him legitimacy? Is it giving him some kind of capital conversion for reputation? Probably. But you know what? This is exactly why it was built. If you want to talk about the problems in crypto, the problem is the US dollar is fiat losing its ability to generate more wealth because the dollar is losing every single day through inflation, through the drop in the dollar, the use of the dollar. We're now at the lowest use of the dollar since the early 50s.
Wow.
So this is okay. I like what he's doing. I understand it. And Look, I don't know how much Vitalik needs to live and to sustain. There's also other reasons for it. I mean, there's tax selling reasons.
Sure.
There's narrative control. Oh, let's try to push the price down so I can buy more down the road. That's not really happening. His agenda is very simple. He said it all the whole time. He likes this so that he can be able to contribute to things that he believes in. He loves animals. So do I. He doesn't want people dying through COVID. I agree with that. He has, I mean, his beliefs and his understanding of human behavior and knowledge is immaculate. We should all strive to be this, right? And to be this smart to be able to produce an Ethereum. And he is also sold to be able to fund other projects.
True.
So good for him. I like this. And no, we should not construe this as a bad thing. We should construe this as a good thing. This is a very, very reason why most of us got into crypto in the first place.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're feeling optimistic about it, Stephen. I can't help but think he's cashing in all that ETH because he wants more of those personalized experiences with that pygmy hippo Moo Dang that I know he loves so much. ETH really took a hit when that thing entered his life, but that's just my thought.
I know what it's like having an animal that you love, Hank.
The absolute best way to break in the week. So I want to thank you so much for your time and expertise and sharing all that with us today, because I know you have your own platform, Quasar Markets, that allows people essentially what we're trying to do here at Roxom, but on the trading side of things, which is give people all the best info that's out there so that they can make informed decisions and actually compete with the big boys out there. So for anyone in our audience, Stephen, that's looking to get that competitive edge, what's the best place they can go to get more info on your amazing platform?
QuasarMarkets.com, and we've had some great shows lately, Quasar's Live, and we've had you on the show. So thank you also for being on the show too as well.
The pleasure was mine. We had a great time. So thank you so much for having me, and thanks for joining us today, Stephen. It's always the best.
Thanks, Frank.
Thanks, Steven. See you next time, buddy. All right, we're taking a break here at Roxom TV News. But when we're back, we're going to be jumping into the second hour of today's top news stories, and we'll be joined by our second special guest of the day to break them all down. So stay tuned. More Roxom TV News coming right back after this quick break.
This is Alex. Alex spends most of his time thinking like a trader, still deciding what to do with his Bitcoin. While Alex waits for the perfect entry, this is Laura. She's watching the S&P drop. Everyone is suddenly a macro expert. She doesn't panic. This is Tom. No screens, no noise, no stress. While Tom focuses on his swing, his Bitcoin focuses on compounding. Because Bitcoiners don't want more dollars. They want more Bitcoin.
I want more Bitcoin.
The best move is letting your Bitcoin work while you plan the next one. Grow by Roxom. One currency, one place.
Welcome back to Roxom TV News. Now, before we move in to our second hour of today's program, let's quickly recap what we covered at the top of today's show. First, President Trump responded to a Supreme Court ruling striking down his previous tariff framework by announcing a new universal 15% global import tariff under a separate legal authority, making it clear that his broader trade strategy is not backing down. Markets reacted cautiously, with equities dipping and gold rising as investors recalibrated for renewed trade friction and the potential ripple effects on inflation, corporate earnings, and global growth. Next, the White House is pressing major banks to accept limited stablecoin rewards as lawmakers push forward the Digital Asset Market Clarity Act, which aims to finally define who regulates what in crypto. The fight centers on whether stablecoin platforms can offer yield without competing directly with traditional bank deposits, a decision that could shape how digital dollars function inside the U.S. financial system for years to come. And finally, on-chain data showed that Ethereum co-founder Vitalik Buterin sold nearly $3.6 million worth of ETH, reigniting debate about founder influence and incentive structures in crypto markets. The contrast with Bitcoin's creator, Satoshi Nakamoto, whose estimated 1 million BTC have never moved, underscores a fundamental difference in monetary design that becomes especially relevant when markets turn volatile. We continue coverage this morning on the violence occurring in Mexico. Chaos erupted across Mexico after security forces killed Nemesio Ruben Oseguera Cervantes, known as El Mencho. Within hours, gunmen set vehicles on fire to block major highways, attacked security forces, and triggered widespread disruptions that forced nearly 400 flight cancellations, school closures, and halted public transportation. Tourist hubs like Puerto Vallarta saw mass cancellations as foreign governments issued travel alerts. And here's what one NBC reporter witnessed at LAX. Take a look.
So I would like to see her walk down the aisle, but unfortunately, it's not going to happen.
The violence in Mexico, specifically Puerto Vallarta and Guadalajara, is having a major impact on flights in and out of LAX, and it's having a major impact on people's lives. I talked to a woman who's supposed to watch her daughter get married tomorrow in Puerto Vallarta, and now that's not happening.
My daughter said, "We love you to be here, but your safety are first priorities."
There is a ton of airlines who have added to the list saying that they're delaying, canceling flights in and out of PV, in and out of Guadalajara. American, Alaska, Delta, Southwest, United, Air Canada, you name it. And this comes after a new travel advisory from the U.S. State Department asking people to shelter in place, to not leave their hotels. They say that government workers there are doing that too. They also say that there's a lot of roadblocks because of the violence, and so ride shares aren't working, things like Uber, Lyfts, and taxis.
Now, on the ground, residents in cities including Guadalajara reported burning trucks, sustained gunfire, military convoys moving through neighborhoods, and communities relying on WhatsApp groups to navigate roadblocks and avoid danger. The speed and scale of the retaliation underscored that even without its leader, the cartel retains the structure and discipline to disrupt civilian life nationwide. And moving on to more about this story, Mexico's President Claudia Sheinbaum has moved quickly to project control, deploying reinforcements and assuring citizens there is absolute coordination between federal and state authorities. Mexico's security secretary says more than 250 roadblocks have already been cleared and 2,500 additional personnel have been deployed to stabilize affected areas. The official message here is consistent. The operation succeeded, the state remains in control, and retaliation will be met with force. The challenge is sustaining that control beyond the headlines. You see, Western Mexico's tourism corridors are economically fragile to even short bursts of instability. And flight cancellations, travel advisories, and booking drops hit local workers almost immediately. With the World Cup approaching, the government has every incentive to demonstrate rapid normalization here. There is also the U.S. dimension of all this. Washington had placed a $15 million bounty on El Mencho, and U.S. intelligence reportedly supported the tracking operation as fentanyl overdoses remain a dominant political issue north of the border. His death is a symbolic win for both governments. If fentanyl flows do not materially decline, however, pressure from Washington will likely intensify rather than ease, and that could shape the next phase of this conflict far more than the last. We'll be following this story as it continues to develop. In the meantime, we're going to be taking a quick break here at RoxomTV News, but when we're back, we're going to be joined by one of our good friends of the program, Mr. Lee, to break down all of the top news of this second hour. So stay tuned. More RoxomTV News coming your way after this quick break. Stay tuned.
This is Alex. Alex spends most of his time thinking like a trader, still deciding what to do with his Bitcoin. While Alex waits for the perfect entry, this is Laura. She's watching the S&P drop. Everyone is suddenly a macro expert. She doesn't panic. This is Tom. No screens, no noise, no stress. While Tom focuses on his swing, his Bitcoin focuses on compounding. Because Bitcoiners don't want more dollars. They want more Bitcoin.
I want more Bitcoin.
The best move is letting your Bitcoin work while you plan the next one. Grow by Roxom. One currency, one place.
Are you interested in effortlessly growing your Bitcoin portfolio? I sure am. And the Bitcoin credit card by Gemini earns you Bitcoin back on every purchase. You can use it like any credit card, buy lunch, gas, or your weekly groceries, and you'll earn up to 4% back instantly in Bitcoin or one of over 50 other cryptos straight to your account. All that with no annual fee. And right now, you can grab a $200 Bitcoin welcome bonus. It's the easiest way to start building your Bitcoin stack. Just go to Gemini.com to learn more. Welcome back to Roxom TV News. We're getting into our next story of the hour as the U.S. Supreme Court has ruled that President Donald Trump overstepped his emergency powers when he imposed sweeping tariffs, striking down his previous tariff framework and immediately raising questions about whether the administration's aggressive trade posture had hit a legal wall. Within hours of that decision, the White House announced a new universal 15% global import tariff under a separate provision of the 1974 Trade Act, making it clear that while one legal pathway was closed, the broader trade strategy remains in force. Markets reacted cautiously, with U.S. futures dipping, European equities wavering, and gold rising. And bond markets are signaling concern about slower growth if trade tensions were to escalate. China criticized the move, European officials requested clarity on implementation, and multinational companies began reassessing supply chains and pricing models. Supporters argue that tariffs strengthen domestic industry and negotiating leverage, while critics warn they act as broad consumer taxes and risk reigniting global trade friction. The key takeaway is that trade policy is once again a live risk factor for markets, with real implications for inflation, corporate earnings, and investment portfolios here at home. All right, joining me to talk about this story and others, we have one of our good friends of the program, Mr. Lee. Mr. Lee, happy Monday. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. It's always great having you. How are you? Oh, the pleasure is all mine. I always like to start the week with the yeehaw, and you're always bringing it, Mr. Lee. So we're always super pumped to have you, and I can't wait to chat with you about these stories because you're always bringing the heat. So let's get back to this first one here, and I want to zoom out for our viewers at home for a second, Lee, because when the Supreme Court strikes down a tariff regime, and then the White House pivots within hours to reestablish a 15% global import tariff under a different legal authority, what does that signal about how trade policy is being used right now to you? Well, what are your thoughts on this story once you heard it, Lee? We'd love to get your opinion here.
Yeah, this certainly takes us back to Liberation Day, doesn't it? I mean, and what I mean by that is just the chaotic nature of this, right? I mean, certainly members of the Trump administration, and I would put Treasury Secretary Bessent in this camp, have tried to make a pretty well-reasoned response and justification for these tariffs, and as well as the broader reordering of global trade. So it sounds very logical when you hear someone like Bessent explain it. And we, Polymarket and I think other prediction markets have suggested for quite some time that these tariffs were going to get struck down by the U.S. Supreme Court. And so we knew there was going to be at least I knew, I think most maybe market participants expected a backup plan, but then a random 15%, an additional tariff over and above what was there in the place. And not only that, but for the people that like the UK and the EU that have already negotiated trade. So it creates a lot of needless confusion. And you're seeing that play out in risk markets. And sadly, Bitcoin's still seen as a risk asset. So they're all reacting to that this morning.
Yeah, I mean, frankly, to me, and I'm just a simple-minded amoeba over here, this feels like a spite tariff. Like, you're telling me I can't tariff everybody? Well, watch what I'll do now. Now everybody's getting tariff 15%. Like, to me, that's how this feels. But I know everyday Americans out there are really just wondering, like, how will this affect us, right? We're always wondering, what does this affect on us? And that's what we try to bring here at Roxom TV News. So, Lee, for those everyday Americans out there who aren't watching bond yields all day, how would something like this, a universal tariff, actually show up in their real life? Is it something that people are going to start feeling at the checkout counter and job markets, maybe their retirement accounts? What do you think will ultimately be the effect of these sweeping 15% global tariffs on the average American consumer?
Well, it's been interesting. I mean, certainly a lot of the pundit class, and I would say also the U.S. Central Bank has suggested that, hey, inflation is going to start showing up in the prices of all of our products that we're buying every day. And the reality is, as you look at inflation, that's actually not the case. In fact, if you look at trueflation, which I think is a more accurate and more kind of micro-tuned look at the price of goods, inflation's been, I haven't looked at it today, but last time I looked last week, it was under 1%. So, is this going to start showing up in the products that we buy? Not necessarily. You might see a one-time adjustment, which I think we've already seen for most things. And to be honest, there are other members of the supply chain that are absorbing some of those price increases. Most of the inflation that we're feeling today has been not from now, but it's been from printing half the money that ever existed during COVID. I mean, that whole COVID period really put us into this place of prices going up 50, 100% from pre-COVID, from 2019.
Yeah.
And even if inflation's down, that doesn't mean the price of goods comes down. It just means the rate of increases starts to slow down, but we're at this new high level of price.
Yeah.
And so that's, I think, what the average American is feeling from their insurance, from their beef, from, all of the different things that they need to buy for their families and for their kids and so on. They're feeling that just higher price that's already there. I don't know that these tariffs are going to drive that additional prices. I think it's going to be more showing up in their retirement accounts because risk assets are getting beat up.
Yeah, well, they're either killing us now or killing us later is how it feels.
Yeah.
And, we saw the markets move in reaction to these new tariffs. We saw futures dip, gold rose again, bonds are signaling that growth might be a concern here. So my question for you, Lee, is what we're seeing from the markets, is that just traders bracing for a potential escalation, or are they simply pricing in additional uncertainty right now? Where do you land on that one?
I think I'm actually seeing two different things. One, yes, I do think they're pricing in some of that uncertainty from this new tariff regime. I mean, if you saw when the Supreme Court struck down the tariffs last week, markets actually popped. Like they actually saw some favorability to that. Now, markets can remain irrational longer than you can remain solvent. I mean, we all knew the Trump administration had a backup plan. So I don't know why markets got ahead of themselves to turn green. But of course, today they're pricing in that risk. There's also, of course, the constant uncertainty around AI, that new Citrini article that came out. So you've got some of those factors. And frankly, beyond Bitcoin and crypto, which have been really in a bear market, the broader equities have been not far from all-time highs. So I think you're seeing people taking any excuse to maybe take some profit off the table.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And, another part about this story that you mentioned, and I would love to expand on a little bit, was that we saw the Supreme Court strike down those initial tariffs 6-3, with several of those votes being from members that Trump appointed. So my question to you, Mr. Lee, is do you think right now we're starting to see people that were appointed by Trump that would traditionally be on his side of the aisle maybe show a little dissent from the man on top right now? Because I feel like we're starting to see cracks in the armor that maybe we hadn't seen before. I mean, during his first term in office, he fired like half of his cabinet members. And now, only a year in, we're starting to see people that were either appointed to or had allegiance to Trump starting to distance themselves a little bit. Are you noticing any kind of shift or change in that at all based on things we're seeing like this most recent Supreme Court ruling?
Well, there's always President Trump's favorite pick, Jerome Powell, chairman of the Federal Reserve that he selected in his first term, and they've had a notoriously rocky relationship. So you're certainly seeing that, and certainly seeing that in the Supreme Court. Now, of course, the Supreme Court is designed, in our government system, it's designed to be neutral, supposedly, and not political. I mean, I think we all know that that's not necessarily the case. But with that in mind, sometimes they can go against the president who elected them because they should be looking at the Constitution, they should be looking at the facts of the case and arrive at a decision. And I think a lot of us kind of thought, market participants were thinking, the longer and longer the Supreme Court, it kept delaying, right? It kept delaying this decision for weeks and weeks. So I started to actually think, maybe Polymarket's wrong this time. But that obviously ended up not being the case.
Yeah, and that's kind of a different subject. But now that I got you on and we kind of touched on it, I would love to get your thoughts on those. How do you feel about those prediction markets? Because for me, they just seem ripe for lots of trouble, specifically with things like the government. If someone has insider info, places a large bet, how does the United States' intelligence process that, or maybe even other countries, right? If you got people placing bets, maybe that have insider info on U.S. intelligence, who's to say that like China is not watching that very closely, or Russia, and making moves based on these hunches? Like, what are your thoughts on these prediction markets? Are they a good thing, or are they allowing degenerate gamblers like myself to just have a little too much fun? Where do you land?
Well, I would say yes to answer that, but I would say that, as a capitalist, right? As a capitalist and as a libertarian, I really look at this and say, this is great. Now I'm not saying, it's not good or bad. I'm not trying to say a judgment call of the morality or any of that. I'm saying as a capitalist market participant, you want to be able to see price signal what market participants think is going to be the outcome, right? And so the price of stocks, the price of bonds really helps us make decisions about the quality potentially of a company. Well, now imagine that I have the ability, this happened with Trump's his election, right, where Polymarket and the betting markets said he's going to win, and the market punditry said no, he's not going to win, and they were right, and that finally got people to clue in and start paying attention. And I would say that Polymarket, Kalshi, and others have been right more often than they've been wrong. So I think it's good to the extent that it gives market participants price data that helps them see what is the likelihood of a particular event, whether they want to participate or not. I don't participate in very many myself, but I use it as data. I use it as data to tell me what's happening.
Yeah, and the very fact that people have to are oftentimes like have to put like money behind it too, kind of validates it a little bit to make me think it's not just people throwing out prognostications and then random, like it does add a little proof to that pudding. But I mean, you could see how it could be problematic though, I think too, specifically with like collegiate sports. If you can bet on collegiate sports in Kalshi or Polymarket, you're talking about these 19, 20-year-old kids that are probably getting met on the side with deals. Hey, throw this game, I'll give you 50 grand. Like, it just seems like it's ripe for tampering. No?
Absolutely. I mean, but anything can, right? It's kind of like we say as Bitcoiners, we say, hey, money can be used for good or by the good guys or the bad guys. It's a neutral thing. And so this is, again, these are neutral market signals. And as you said, people have to put their own capital behind it to make a bet on the direction of a particular event. And so that gives the market participants signals. Now, can that be abused? Sure. There were all those rumors, right, of some of these, poly markets, like you said, being abused by insiders potentially in the Trump administration, allegedly, right? We don't have evidence of that, but often people point to, Barron Trump, allegedly, right? So are those things happening? We don't know. But the bottom line is it's the most capitalist type market that you can imagine. And that's valuable information for market participants to pay attention to.
Yeah, you make a good point, and it kind of reminds me of this phrase that I'm hoping you'll catch on eventually that I use in terms of Bitcoin and people saying like, Bitcoin's the problem when it's used in, Silk Road or whatever. It's like, it's a tool and you don't blame fire for the actions of an arsonist, right? Like that's just how they choose to use it. And this to an extent can be applied there. I think it's a little more problematic, but I don't really know how you rein those problems in right now. So we'll see as these prediction markets continue to grow. And I got a feeling they're not going anywhere anytime soon. All right, we're going to move on to our next story here, Mr. Lee. So stay tuned. I'll bring you back in just a second because a public Bitcoin mining company recently made a move that raised eyebrows across the entire industry. BitDeer Technologies announced it now holds 0 Bitcoin on its corporate balance sheet. Let me say that again. 0. According to its weekly operational update, the company produced 189.8 Bitcoin during the week ending February 20th, and it sold all of it. It also liquidated its remaining 943 BTC reserve within that same week. 1 week earlier, that reserve was fully intact. 7 days later, is gone. Now, BitDeer posted on X saying, our decision to sell Bitcoin should not be a concern for the broader market. We are currently evaluating multiple non-binding powered land acquisition opportunities, and we believe it is prudent to prepare liquidity now. Our hash rate will continue to grow, and we will continue to mine more Bitcoin for the interest of our shareholders. The company now recently raised $325 million through convertible notes and another $43.5 million in equity to fund data center expansion and AI infrastructure initiatives. Margins have tightened, with gross margin falling to 4.7% in Q4 2025 compared to 17.4% the year prior. Meanwhile, other public miners maintain sizable treasuries. Mara holds over 53,000 Bitcoin, Riot over 18,000. Strategy remains the largest corporate holder globally. BitDeer's full liquidation stands out because maintaining a treasury reserve is standard among public miners seeking long-term price exposure. And for viewers at home, this matters because it signals that capital pressure and strategic redirection in a post-halving environment where mining margins are tighter. And miners are increasingly pivoting toward AI and high-performance computing revenue streams. Yet, despite one firm going to 0, Bitcoin's network hash rate continues hitting new cycle highs. One company exited its treasury, and the network itself remains stronger than ever before. All right, we're bringing Mr. Lee back. Lee, a public mining company going from holding over 900 Bitcoin to 0 in a single week definitely raised some eyebrows. How do you think regular investors should be interpreting this move? Is it like they said, that I'm just pivoting, it sounds like, to different infrastructure? Or should we be a little concerned that a Bitcoin miner sold all of its Bitcoin? What are your thoughts?
Well, it's really interesting. The mining industry, as we all know, as Bitcoiners, is incredibly competitive. And obviously, as you said, the halving continues to force, greater and greater difficulty and cost upon miners to function. It's an absolute cutthroat industry.
Yeah.
Now, what you are seeing, of course, is that a lot of these Bitcoin miners, nearly all of them now, as far as I can tell, are making some types of pivot towards AI HPC and hosting AI workloads. But what's really interesting is the leader in the space that I would say, and again, I say this as full disclosure, I'm an investor in IREN or Iris Energy. They started from this path. They started, in the late 20 teens, knowing that AI would be, a high demand item in data centers. And so they started bootstrapping with a Bitcoin miner, but then pivoted to AI, and they never held on to Bitcoin. And people always criticized them. I've been a Bitcoin mining investor for a long time, and they criticized them. But now everybody's starting to see, oh, wait a minute. Building out AI, acquiring land, acquiring power, those things are incredibly expensive.
Oh, yeah.
And so sell the Bitcoin right away, keep a lean operation, deliver power, land, show that you can mine Bitcoin effectively. And then the hyperscalers will see, and they'll come and do deals with you. So like Iron's done deals with Microsoft. Cypher, another one, has done deals with Google. And so I think Bitdeer is trying to position itself the same way. CleanSpark's positioning itself in similar ways. Mara has done it. They just did an acquisition for a company in France to try to position themselves as an AI HPC host. So that's, I think, what you're seeing in the Bitcoin mining space. And I'll be surprised if you see hodling Bitcoin as something that most of the miners do. I think you'll see a few continue to do so, but a lot of the smaller players, I think you'll see them start to sell that Bitcoin and go ahead and invest that in AI.
Yeah, to me, I mean, it seems to a certain degree like probably a smart diversification play, right? Like, I mean, we all know AI is the next big thing, and kind of similar, like you hold Bitcoin. No, I mean, I'm a Bitcoin maximalist, but like, hey, if you want to do some Ethereum too, that might hit. Like, I get it. It makes sense. But obviously, people are concerned about this because we're at an interesting time where AI obviously is the big buzz, and we're in this post-halving environment. So my question for you, Lee, is what we're seeing simply a sign of capital pressure in this bear market we're experiencing right now? Or is it simply a strategic decision that we're going to see more and more of these miners expand into AI infrastructure going forward? Or maybe is it kind of a combination of both, and we're just hitting this at an interesting time?
That's a good question. I mean, what I think about, generally speaking, the miners that are being most proactive, again, I think back to Iron, they started with this strategy from the get-go, right? To not hang on to a lot of Bitcoin, even when times were good, even when they were, Bitcoin was in the six figures, right? When six-figure corn, right? When does that come back? They were heavily criticized by investors for selling their Bitcoin at that time, but it's worked out very well. So from that standpoint, I think that the miners that are doing it strategically have been thoughtful and have looked out in the future to see, like, hey, AI is going to be a trend. Bitcoin mining is going to continue to be a high pressure business. So let's have a bit of both. But the interesting thing about the Bitdeer announcement is the timing, as you said, it being kind of in the depths of this bear market, to be honest. We're sitting in between the 200-day EMA and the 200-day moving average of Bitcoin between kind of 68 to 58K. Now is the time to sell the HODL? It seems like that might have been actually maybe last fall, might have been the right time. So you could raise a significant amount of capital. So that kind of looks a little suspicious from a timing perspective. And then, of course, the other aspects that they're doing around convertible bonds and so on, which all of the players, by the way, are doing convertible bonds and raising money that way rather than doing at the market offerings and selling stock and diluting shareholders. But the timing is a bit suspect. And so you kind of wonder, okay, is this a shift in strategy for them?
Yeah. I mean, because your point, like, it would have been last fall. I mean, obviously hindsight's 2020, but you're selling your Bitcoin at literally half what it was just a couple of months ago. So you're thinking 60K times almost 1,000. That's millions, tens of millions of dollars you're missing out on. So certainly an interesting time to decide to make that transition over to AI, when if you were in Bitcoin from the jump, you got to figure, like, it's probably going to go back up again, but maybe, as you said, they're getting capital to acquire more land and stuff. So maybe they just need the money right now, hence that sale. And then, Mr. Lee, I would love to get your perspective as a long-term Bitcoiner. Like, They also mentioned that the hash rate is still increasing. This had no real effects on it. And for those people watching at home, like, how important is it that Bitcoin's hash rate continues hitting cycle highs, even while individual firms like BitDeer are making short-term capital decisions? Like, how important is that to the overall Bitcoin network?
Oh, it's critical. I mean, Bitcoin miners secure the network. That's the whole point. I mean, I'm looking at the hash rate now, over 1 zeta hash. That's incredible. I mean, the network has never been more secure. And so clearly that's telling you there's a lot of demand. And I would argue corporate demand is doing its best, but a lot of that corporate demand for hash rate has been continuing to hash, but a lot of pivoting to AI. You're probably starting to see, I have no evidence of this, but you're probably seeing some sovereigns that are coming online. And that's what I believe has pushed us over the 1 zeta hash mark. And it just makes the network more and more secure when you've got all of these miners hashing on the network. So I think it's a net positive. I think eventually we'll see that reflected in price. It clearly shows that adoption is growing. And as adoption grows and more people are involved in the network, more organizations, more sovereigns are involved securing the network, I think you'll see that more and more from an investing perspective as well.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. And, another thing when it comes to the miners, at least in the past, whenever I hear that miners are selling, that usually is on the precipice of something I feel like not good happening. Why are they selling? They should be keeping. They know it as well as anybody. So if stepping back, does the fact that we're seeing miners sometimes have to sell to fund operations, does that ultimately reinforce Bitcoin's design, that separating network security from corporate treasury behavior? Or does it maybe introduce some structural vulnerabilities over time? What are your thoughts on that one? Is it ultimately like an okay thing that they have to sell sometimes?
I think this is something that we see, right? Bitcoin, like any asset, is cyclical. And so you have these kind of what they call minor capitulations, right? You have these times where, I mean, hash price has been absolutely terrible, kind of the price that miners are able to obtain by selling Bitcoin, after generating it and hashing it on the network. You see this hash price has been very, very low through the entire cycle. We've never really had a good expansion in terms of Bitcoin price. So they've been under a lot of pressure, not just from the halving, but just from the way that this cycle has played out. And in the past, you see these minor capitulations happen where they try to hodl for as long as they can, and eventually they just have to start raising capital. That sort of shows a time of when we're roughly coming to the bottom. Now, I'm not saying we're at the bottom right now, or that 60,000 was the bottom in terms of Bitcoin price, but it surely suggests to me that we're in a bottoming phase. We're probably later in the bottoming cycle than we are at the beginning. And so that's how I look at when I see minor capitulation, when I see them having to sell more Bitcoin than they've typically held on to in the past, is that we're starting to get to be out of the woods. That's what I believe we're headed towards.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think the signals are there. I saw a recent graphic, I think it was just yesterday, and they were talking about the major downturns we had seen in Bitcoin's price during the past couple of cycles. And it was something like 80-something%, 77, 74, and then our most recent would be like in the 55% arena. And you think about how fundamentally different the base of Bitcoin is now, with institutions just scooping up all of retail, dumping it. Like, it feels like we're right around that arena that makes sense for the bottom. So I think a 20% less of a correction than we had seen during the previous cycle, given all the tailwinds we've seen in the space in the last year, feels pretty good. And you combine that with what you mentioned about miners having to sell, I think you're right. And I think we're right around that spot where we're going to start seeing that recovery that we've all been waiting for. I think it'll be later this year. I mean, I can't predict the future, obviously, but it seems like the writing is certainly on the wall from what you're seeing on the miners and what we've seen historically. So I remain very bullish on 2026 for those reasons. And we're going to come back in just a second, Mr. Lee, because we got one more story to break down when we return here at RoxomTV News, as we're going to be chatting about OpenClaw AI's bans to people who are contributing to the platform who use the term Bitcoin. I don't like it, but we're going to talk about that and more when we're back with Mr. Lee when we return. Stay tuned.
Security matters. Zappo Bank, the only way to bank your Bitcoin. Apply now at zappobank.com.
Welcome back to Roxom TV News. Our next story takes place as an open source AI project with more than 200,000 GitHub stars recently decided that one word is simply too radioactive for its Discord server. The word in question? Bitcoin. OpenClaw, built with Australian developer Peter Steinberger, exploded in popularity after launching earlier this year, offering AI agents that integrate with local files, browsers, terminals, messaging apps, and major language models. It quickly became one of the fastest growing open source AI frameworks online. Then crypto chaos entered the chat. During an early rebrand, scammers launched a fraudulent Solana-based token called Claude that briefly reached $16 million in market cap before collapsing more than 90% after Steinberger publicly disavowed it. There were harassment campaigns, malicious third-party add-ons, attempts to steal crypto private keys, so OpenClaw implemented a zero crypto rule on its official Discord. Contributor Clash27 posted, got blocked from OpenClaw Discord for saying Bitcoin. Clash27 is multi-agent benchmark where Bitcoin block height is just a clock. Mod 27, no tokens, hypothesis. Can we pre-weigh intent? If attention is measured, we can bring trust to OpenClaw agents. Now, Steinberger, the creator, responded by saying, we have strict server rules that you accepted when you entered the server. No crypto mention whatsoever is one of them. The rule remains firm, and mention Bitcoin, crypto, or blockchain, you get an immediate ban. Supporters say it's risk management after a $16 million scam and ecosystem exploits, but critics argue that banning discussion of open source money inside an open source AI project feels philosophically awkward. Now, for our audience at home, this taps into a broader cultural tension between AI builders and crypto developers. Both communities champion decentralization and open systems, but when scams show up, the tolerance disappears pretty fast. The real debate is not about one Discord ban. It's about whether open innovation can survive without open conversation. We're bringing Mr. Lee back to chat about this one. Lee, an open source AI project banning the word Bitcoin after a scam involving a fake token sounds almost surreal, yet kind of typical. Do you see this as understandable risk management, or is this just a huge overcorrection? Where do you land on this one?
Well, having played with OpenClaw quite a bit lately, I mean, it's a fascinating project. I think it's an incredible example of what truly agentic AI and what the future could look like. So it's really awesome and great to see so many people participating. But I'm afraid this is another one of those situations where the crypto community kind of created this problem for itself, and not just them, right? We even have to look at our president of the United States launching his own token, then Trump coin, Melania coin, rug pulling both of them, right? And so many crypto scams from SBF and Terra Luna and just all of these different scams. There's just a lot of baggage associated with crypto, so much so that a lot of Bitcoin maxis will just say, hey, I'm a Bitcoiner, and then crypto's over here is like a separate thing. There's almost that the warring, brother and sister type of thing happening there. Mm-hmm. And so I think what you have here with the founder of the OpenClaw project is just like hey, I don't even want to touch this thing. I don't want it anywhere near me. I've already seen a coin try to, scam folks that are following the OpenClaw project, and so he just shut it down. Bitcoiners would say, hey, you're kind of conflating two different things. But again, we just haven't done ourselves a lot of favors. We've had a lot of bad actors in the space, and they've just given us a bad reputation.
And you brought up something interesting, Lee, that I would love to chat about. You mentioned Trump, and when he came out, literally the second he got in office, we get Trump coin and Melania coin. But he also brought us promises of the United States being the crypto capital of the world, and Bitcoin being on the strategic reserve, and us maybe actively acquiring it. Yet here we are, a year later, a lot of promises, most of which seem unfulfilled. So at this point, during his second tenure in office, do you think Trump has been a net positive or a net negative for the overall crypto and Bitcoin markets? What are your thoughts as for where we are right now?
Well, I mean, it certainly doesn't feel good as a holder of Bitcoin, I don't hold any altcoins, but I'm sure over there it's even more depressing these days and for quite a while. And again, as I said earlier, I mean, we just had no expansion. We typically have some kind of blow off top in Bitcoin. And we just didn't get that this time. So, we have to take a step back and look at, well, what is different now? Well, you've got the entire cabinet. Most of the entire cabinet are Bitcoin holders. You've got, a Bitcoin and crypto friendly SEC, CFTC. You've got regulations coming in. We've got the Genius Act already out there, kind of laying some of the groundwork, around stablecoins, where the government's working, the Congress is working on this Clarity Act, right, to put in market structure for crypto, but also clarify exactly how stablecoins can be brought to use, because of course the government needs people to buy its treasuries, and so they've seen how successful Tether has been, such a loyal investor in U.S. Treasuries, so they want to spread that love. So you have all this infrastructure. You have a government now who is not actively trying to destroy every aspect of crypto as we had in the prior administration. So the groundwork is all of there. And as Bitcoiners, what we like to say is, and I have to remind myself of this sometimes too, because I'm also an investor in Bitcoin equities, is low time preference. Where is your low time preference? Now all the structure is in place, probably to live beyond any anti-crypto administration in the future. There's enough tentacles that are in place that we have a great structure to build for the next 5 to 10 years. So have a lower time preference, and let's see what happens. So on net, I think it's positive. I mean, I think the other administration certainly would have been antagonistic at least, and would have sought extinction level chasing of crypto further offshore to other countries at worst. So I think it's in that positive, just hasn't reflected in price yet.
Yeah, you make some really good points there, Lee. I think, comparatively, we had seen the other side of the aisle get in office. The landscape probably looked even more dire than it is now. And with Trump, you got to kind of expect it's oftentimes two steps forward, one step back situation. I just feel like we're taking the one step back first, and because everyone's expectations got so high earlier in the year, we're feeling like a little let down right now. Even though to what you mentioned was very true, it's like, we have so many people in the cabinet, in the government right now that are pro-crypto. It's made Bitcoin itself a topic of conversation that is going to affect more elections going forward. So you're going to have to see people on the other side of the aisle get in if they even want a chance in some of these elections. And like you said, we kind of have all the things in place. We're just waiting for those to kind of all come together to take us to that next step in Bitcoin and crypto's journey. And I think, like you said, the time preference issue is a big one. So, we started the year last year, what was it, around 90,000. We ended this year in the high 60s, 70s-ish. So I feel like a lot of us are thinking things aren't going great, but to your point, the structure is all there. We just need a little bit more time, I think, to get everything properly in place. So I would agree with you. I think it's a net positive so far too, despite the feelings that we're getting right now. And, I want to talk a little bit more about what is happening with this platform, Lee, as we started here and get back on track. For viewers at home that might not be too deep into crypto culture, like, how common is it really for a legitimate open source project like OpenClaw to draw a hard line in the sand after something like this and being burned by scammers? Is that unusual, you think, for an open source platform? Just be like, hey, we're staying away from the whole Bitcoin crypto thing entirely? Or do you think this is kind of par for the course for something like this?
Well, I mean, OpenClaw has gotten so much attention. I mean, I think I saw that it has more contributors than Linux, which is a long-running operating system that developers have been using. So, I mean, it's absolutely taken the world by storm. People are building businesses and wrappers around it. You can't look at any social media platform, well, at least X anyway. You can't scroll X for more than 2 or 3 minutes, and see 5, 10, 15, 20 links of ultimate guide for OpenClaw, 20 skills to teach your OpenClaw now, all of this stuff. And, in a few months, they'll show up on Facebook and LinkedIn. But it's I think it's one of those things that, because it's so visible, and once you have kind of one of those scams happen, I get it. I mean, it's unfortunate that he kind of took a zero tolerance approach to it. But again, it's just getting so much attention. And then, of course, you have OpenAI scooping up the founder, right? And who knows what's going to happen now to OpenClaw? But now it's part of kind of the AI glitterati. And so I think he's, and probably prior to those deals happening, I think he wanted as clean a slate as possible. So I think there's some unique variables at play, because he was talking to a number of the frontier models about the future of OpenClaw and where he would go. And so he probably wanted things nice and clean and easy to have those conversations and not have, again, some of the baggage of crypto and scams and that kind of thing around him. So somewhat unique.
Makes sense. Yeah, it does keep it a little cleaner. And I honestly, I wouldn't be surprised, kind of as we're seeing with, government officials having to acquiesce and big banks, like everybody kind of comes back to Bitcoin eventually. You'll hate it at first, but, you do the research and, even Jamie Dimon has turned a corner on that a little bit. So wouldn't be too surprising. All right, we got one more story that I am very excited to chat with you about, Lee. So hang 10. I'm going to bring it back in just a second. This one is out of this world because President Trump recently came out and said that he is directing the Pentagon and other federal agencies to begin identifying and releasing records related to UFOs and unidentified aerial phenomena, and yes, anything involving potential extraterrestrial life. Now, this comes after former President Barack Obama recently added fuel to the fire in a podcast interview where he said aliens could exist given how vast the universe is, but later backtracked and made it clear he never saw any evidence of them while in office. Now, before anyone starts packing for Mars, it is worth noting that the government has released UFO-related reports before, and so far, none have confirmed extraterrestrial technology. We're bringing Lee back. Lee, this is a fun one. Barack comes out on a podcast, says he thinks the aliens are out there. I think Trump then immediately took that opportunity to say something insulting about Obama, at which he said he is now going to release all of the UFO files. Where do you land on the UFOs? Pun very much intended. Are these real or are they something else?
Well, the first thing we have to look at is the timing of disclosure. I mean, as somebody who's very UFO curious, fascinating timing around the tariff, announcement from the Supreme Court. We've got, a bunch of the military sitting over near Iran, ready for potential war. So very interesting timing for disclosure. Seems
not to mention how Epstein curious we are right now.
And then the Epstein files.
Aliens are over here. Look at them.
Exactly. Yeah, all of those Epstein files dumped, but then so much of them redacted. So many unanswered questions. Just interesting timing for disclosure is my first point. But I mean, the universe is just so vast. I mean, and there's so many unexplained phenomena. There's got to be a reason for it. Now, they often happen around Air Force bases. So you could make the argument maybe they are some kind of specialized, military aircraft the U.S. just hasn't told us about. But I don't know, man. Some of the stuff that you've heard about just defies, all of physics that we couldn't possibly have. So something's out there.
If there's one story that's going to be able to garner my attention better than a child sex trafficking ring involving the most powerful people on Earth, it's aliens for sure, unless I find out they're in the Epstein files too, in which case we're all screwed. But I would love to give you my thoughts on this. Here's my thoughts on aliens, and it might be an unpopular opinion, but I would love to give it to you. So here you go. You ready for this, Lee? Here it is. I think that aliens probably do exist. The galaxy is basically infinite. They're out there somewhere. But I think what we've been experiencing are humans from the future. I think humans eventually, or some iteration of our being, gather the ability to manipulate time and space. And because the reason I think that is, we've seen all of these sightings. You mentioned they're often around like nuclear test facilities, military war zones. I'm of the opinion that I think our future selves are checking in on us, and they're getting to this point in time that they might know could result in maybe the end of the world. And if the world ends, they, in theory, would cease to exist because they would not exist anymore because they came from us initially. So I think it's a future human civilization checking in, making sure we don't all blow ourselves up, because God knows we're always at the precipice of that, seemingly, with all the nukes we got and everything. So I think that's why we haven't encountered them yet, or we haven't met them, because any terrestrial being that flies from across the galaxy to come to Earth is probably here in search of resources, and we've seen how that plays out. I rewatched Independence Day recently. I'm well versed. So I think they're humans from the future just checking in on us, and I think they might have left Bitcoin for us because they said they need a better monetary system. I'm saying Satoshi Nakamoto was sent from the future. That is my take. Am I crazy? Should I submit myself to a crazy person's home, Lee? What are your thoughts?
I should call you Christopher Nolan, because that sounds like Interstellar.
Yeah, a little bit. There's some interstellarness to it. Christopher Nolan, great filmmaker of our time. He's probably not
incredible. Oh, it's one of the best movies ever. And so hopefully not to give it away too much if someone hasn't seen it already. But I mean, that's an interesting theory. I don't know. I tend to be one that thinks, the creator will eventually say, everybody get out of the pool. You guys are done. You're going to blow yourselves up. So that's my view. But, who knows what these things are.
Staying with that, though, part of me wonders, too, if the idea of God is also something that was maybe given to us by future generations. Because, like, hope is maybe the most important, I think, of the human emotions. It carries us through difficult times and allows us to persevere. So it probably wouldn't be the worst idea to have your, civilization believe there is a higher power, because it leads us wanting more and, advancing to the next things. But I don't know. It's a fun topic. I love jazzing about it, and I appreciate you letting me go off of my crazy little diatribe about it, because I don't know. None of us do, but it's fun to talk about, isn't it?
It always is. It always makes a great show, right?
It does. And the only thing that's better, and that is better to talk about and makes a great show, is when I have you with me on the show, Mr. Lee. It's always an absolute treat whenever we get you to jam with us here on Roxom TV News. So I want to thank you so much for your time this morning and indulging me on some of my crazy conspiracy theories. Now, I know you are a man of sharp critiques and insights yourself. So for all of our audience out there that's looking to get more of Mr. Lee, what's the best place I can send them so they can check in and see what you're up to?
Yeah, come find me out on X. I'm at Mr. Lee Hodl, HODL, on X, and would love to have the conversation on AI, tech, Bitcoin, investing, anything that, and of course, eating well and staying fit. So yeah, reach out.
Love to hear it. Awesome, Lee. Well, thank you so much. We always appreciate having you on the show, and I can't wait to see you again real soon, my friend. Thanks for joining us this morning. It's always a pleasure.
Have a good one, Hank. Great to see you.
You as well, Lee. Cheers. All right, gang, that's a wrap for our Monday edition here at Roxom TV News. We laughed, we lived, we loved, we had great guests, and now we are coming to a close. But we'll be back tomorrow at our Tuesday time of 8 a.m. PST for more of the day's top news stories. So make sure you tune in, and we'll see you there. And if you haven't already, please do the thing. Make sure to like, follow, and subscribe to Roxom TV, Roxom TV News, Hank at Roxom TV, and make sure to check out Mr. Lee as well. He's got some of the best takes out there, so you'll want to make sure you follow him too. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in on this Monday morning with us, and we'll be back tomorrow, same news, different day, right here on Roxom TV. So thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you boys and girls tomorrow. Cheers.